So, John, was there something you started to say?
I
Okay.
don't think so. I was waving at your
Oh.
husband.
I think
Oh, and then I was going to say hi,
Hi,
Richard.
I
Richard.
think that may have been me telling my dog that she didn't need to go outside for the
Oh,
18th
okay.
time today, and then realized I wasn't muted.
Okay. I remember a time, now it's lesson time. I remember a time when I was in high school, and my mother was always interested in family history, and somehow or another they made an arrangement with the Family History Library in Salt Lake that would they please visit the cemetery in Midland, Texas, and write down all of the inscriptions on all of the tombstones so that these could be published and made available to anybody that went to the genealogy library in Salt Lake. And my mother was not a typist and I was. So I ended up being the typist to type, I don't know how many pages of cemetery inscriptions. And then these books were bound and the pages were bound and they were put on the shelf at the Family History Library in Salt Lake. We don't have to work that hard at it today. That is one of the blessings of technology, is that information that is found about our families in cemeteries is much easier to find now than it was then. So Memorial Day is getting ready to come. My mother told us a lot of family history stories when we were young. And my mother moved to Utah just a year after Charles and I married and moved to Utah. My mother never told me I had relatives that were buried in Utah. And I probably should have figured it out. I have one little slice of LDS ancestors. It makes sense that some of those LDS ancestors were buried in Utah. So as Memorial Day would come each year, and my friends, because it's an old Utah tradition, would go take flowers to the graves of their families on Memorial Day. I always felt bad that we had to stay home and couldn't do that. Then I realized that we do have ancestors in Utah, and we started visiting the graves. Now, at first, the only one that we really realized was our great-grandfather, who is buried in Springville. But each year, Charles, please. Charles is singing happy birthday to our daughter. As we visited, I started out just visiting the one grave that came to the top of my mind. And then later I realized more and more that I have additional ancestors. And now we pretty much make it a Memorial Day visit to go to the cemeteries in Utah and visit the graves. I have one great grandmother, and you've heard me talk about her in other lessons. She married, her name was Lily Wade, and she married William S. Michael in March of 1869, had a baby 9 months later in mid-December, and died New Year's Day. And so she was only in our family for 9 months, 9.5 months. And I always felt very close to her and wanted to know more about her. And in the days before technology, and with a slower brain, a year would go by before I'd think of something else to do to research her. And it took me a long time to find out enough about her that I felt like I knew her and was ready then to go on to figure out who her father was, and find out who her father was and who her mother was and who her siblings were and whatever. This is so much easier today. I could find out everything I learned about Lily Wade. Now I could find out in 2 hours, whereas before it took me 5 years or something to learn about her. Once on vacation a few years ago, my husband was at business meetings in Kansas City, and she was buried in Warrensburg, Missouri. So we went to Warrensburg, Missouri, and went and knocked on the door of the house in the cemetery. And it was the sexton who took care of all the cemetery records. And he told us where her grave was. And we went and looked. And he said, I think that Halloween pranksters broke her tombstone, but it should be laying near her grave. And we went and found it. And as I stood on her grave, at her gravesite, I have to describe the feelings I felt then and the feelings I still feel whenever I go there, and I've been able to go several times. I felt that I was on holy ground. I feel a connection to this great-great-grandmother because of what she gave to me. I think that one of the things that she gave to me was difficulty in labor. My mother had trouble having children. My grandmother had trouble having children. I've always had trouble staying in labor. All of my daughters have had trouble staying in labor. I think that we inherited this from Lily Wade Michael and even from her mother. But mostly, she had a little baby boy who lived and became my great-grandfather. And that is William S. Michael's only living child to have a child. He had other children that lived, but they weren't able to have children. So I have always felt very close to her. And as I said, I feel like when I am at her grave site that I am on sacred ground, on holy ground. So I have all of these things combined to give me an enjoyment of cemeteries. Now that seems kind of a strange thing to say, but that's how I feel. I am looking forward to this year's Memorial Day. I have invited some of my grandchildren to go with us as we explore Utah graves on Memorial Day. Now, so that's a little bit about cemetery research and how it applies to me. When you find where someone is buried, you often learn more about them, and you often find other family buried nearby them, which assists in research. In the olden days, we would get help from the cemetery sexton or from the mortuary. We do things differently today, thanks to Find a Grave. So I am going to open up my screen and show you some things about searching online for Find a Grave. It looks like, as I was pulling up sites ahead of time, here is the grave of Lily Wade Michael. And here is the stone. My husband reset it in cemetery in cement, and then put another little cement piece here at the base, in which we wrote down the same things that are on her stone. This says I've got 2 of 3 pictures. Let's see what the other pictures are. Probably not anything. Oh, there's a picture of her. I'm glad that it happened that we were able to get a picture of her with as short a time as she had in our family. So let's go to Lily Wade's Find a Grave, and but first we need to talk a little bit about Find a Grave. Find a Grave was started by some people who wanted to have a free site to register graves. And in the early days, in order to be able to put somebody on Find a Grave, and this is still true, you had to establish a profile and make an account. Now, only a few years ago, Ancestry.com bought Find a Grave, and or acquired it. And so now things are a little bit different. And we often find hints to find a grave, whether we find them on Family Search or on Ancestry. Now, something that you should know about those hints is if you search on Ancestry and look up Find a Grave in their in the card catalog, so that you say, so example, if I were to look up Missouri Find a Grave in the card catalog on Ancestry, it would tell me what day they became active on Find a Grave. And what that means is that only graves that were on Find a Grave in Missouri prior to that date are currently indexed on Ancestry. So we might go to Ancestry and look for a cemetery grave and not find them and think, but I know that person's dead. I know that person's dead. Well, what it means is that Ancestry just sent their computer, Find a Grave is indexed on Ancestry by the computer, not by people at all. And they only did that several years ago. So most of the states that are on Find a Grave through Ancestry, the computer worked and indexed in about 1913. I mean 2013. And so anybody that has died since then isn't even going to be in Find a Grave if you go through Ancestry. So I would suggest that we go directly to Find a Grave. And so if you do a search on the main line at Google, and you just type in Find a Grave, and it sends you to Find a Grave. And then this is the site that you get. Also in 2017, they decided to update their search engine on Find a Grave and make it a better searching site. And in my opinion, they really goofed it up. It is not a easily searched site. So I was going to show you today how poorly the search engine is, and every single grave I looked for, I found. Easy, first thing. So that kind of says, oh, maybe it's not so bad after all, Nancy. When you search on Find a Grave, you can either look for a memorial, which means someone's page. You can look for a cemetery. You can look for famous people, or you can contribute. And if you want to contribute, you have to make your profile. When I started, there were like 50 Find a Grave memorials in our hometown cemetery. Now it's 98% or thereabouts listed with memorials for that percent of the people that are buried there, which means that there's, I don't remember the numbers, but a couple of thousand people maybe who all have their stones in our hometown cemetery. So it is really come a long way. If I were to search by cemeteries, and I would search for my hometown cemetery, and I would fill in Cedar Grove Cemetery in Mancos, Colorado, and I would get a little screen like this. And so it says that there's 1,890 memorials, and it's 99% photographed. So that means that 99% of the graves from the Cedar Grove Cemetery are there. And I couldn't help but be interested when I looked at this today, and I see that there are five pictures of the cemetery that have been posted by different people. And this is one that I posted back in the early days when I went and found my family members in the Cedar Grove Cemetery. Here is a very good, on the other side of this board, is the map of the cemetery and who's buried where. And then here's a deer. And I thought, how many cemeteries are going to have a deer in their cemetery. So I took a picture and put it in of that. But so this is our cemetery. Now, if I want to search in the cemetery, if I go to here, I get a search screen. And so let's just say that I want to know how many people with my maiden name are buried in this cemetery. And here I get a list of everybody with my maiden name that is buried in this cemetery. And then it's easy for me from there to say, oh, here's my grandpa, down here's my mother. If I go down a bit, I will find did somebody saying something? My husband saying use the down arrow to see the rest of them. If I click on Hugo and do a search on Hugo, I don't want to put Nancy.
Diane is trying to get your attention, Nancy.
Who is?
Diane,
Okay, Diane, let me give you my attention.
Diane, not me.
Is it Diane Okremenko or Diane Rogers?
Not
It's
Diane Rogers.
It's Diane Okamiko.
Okay.
I was wondering, is that only available in the United States?
No, it's worldwide, but it has a much, much higher percentage in the United States than it does in other countries.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think we're to Russia.
I'm thinking about like Canada.
I think that there might be quite a few in Canada.
Yeah, they
Now,
are.
what I would do if you ever went to Canada is I would make sure that you take pictures and make entries of as many entries as you can find. The first time we went to the old Mormon cemetery in Mancos, Colorado, we filmed every single stone that we found. And then later somebody else went in and they must have found the cemetery county, the people in the county that are in charge of cemeteries, and they got a map of who was supposed to be buried there, and they did a better job of finding people. The first time we went to that cemetery, the weeds were up to our knees. The last time we went, somebody had mowed the lawn. So cemeteries are going to have different things at different times. So as I'm just thinking about this cemetery, there's our baby's cemetery stone. Now, the stones are interesting. They're going to tell us births and deaths and a few things like that. The interesting thing about cemeteries nowadays are this additional thing that they have. They have a place for a little biography, and different people are going to have written different amounts of biography. And this, they also now have it available for you to list who the parents and children and siblings are. Now, this is just really a neat thing. It looks like I don't have pulled up John Van Dyke. So let's do a search on John Van Dyke, because I learned so much about John Van Dyke's family by doing this search. Now, he was buried in Illinois, and he's buried Crawford County. He's across the border from Jasper County. Now, halfway across, if you go one direction, you go to Crawford County, and if you go the other direction, you go to Cumberland County. And I am thinking that he is in Cumberland County. And I thought that I had written in my notes what year he was born, and I didn't. But I do know Illinois. Let's see if just doing Illinois will pull him up. He is, and so I'm going to go down. Here's all of the John Van Dykes that are buried in Illinois that their search engine found. And Cumberland County, here he is. Look at this biography. Wow, a really long biography. one of the interesting things about this biography is that he got gold fever in 1849 and sent off to California to find gold with 20 other men from nearby. They took 5 months to make the journey, and he had a son born while he was gone. And of the 20 that left, it was like 5 that came back. And he was one of the 5 that came back. But such an interesting story. And then it tells that he had 13 children. And then here are all of his children's own Find a Grave sites. So someone has connected all of his children on Find a Grave to him. You could make a family group sheet from the information on Find a Grave if you didn't know it before. You can also search for other people with the same last name in the same cemetery and find their relatives. You can sometimes get pictures of people that you didn't have a picture of before by finding them on Find a Grave. Find a Grave is just a really wonderful way that a lot of people have made a good record of their family members. I did a really good job in the beginning, and that was before they had the ability to do all of the children's linkings and stuff that you can do now. So just as a learning, oh, that doesn't do it. I'm trying to find, I'm trying to move this bar that shows pictures, because I thought that that it would be more interesting for us to, Jeannie, I was going to say, can you tell us one of your ancestors that we could search for?
Okay.
So if they probably will be listed by the name that they had when they died. Most people are not listed by their maiden names. In most family research, we do maiden names, but not in cemeteries.
Okay. So, let's see.
Preferably somebody where you know the cemetery's name as well.
Yes, this is in Lake Point Cemetery.
She's gonna go get us somebody that is, that she really is interested in, okay?
Lake Point Cemetery, Twilla County, Utah. And I'm just looking up her first name. They called her Mame, but she had another first name. Let's see. Mary Eugenia Knowlton.
Mary Eugenia?
Yeah, Mary, one word, Eugenia, second word, last name Knowlton. And Eugenia is Eugenia.
Okay, and Knowlton is?
Knoww.
Knoww.
Lton.
Okay, you know her birth year?
Looks like she was born in 1864.
And she died in Utah.
She died in Twilla, Utah.
Okay.
47.
And Knowlton was her married name.
No, Knowlton was her maiden name. Her married name was Griffith. Mary Eugenia Knowlton Griffith.
Okay. Griffith.
Correct.
And I'm going to take out Eugenia because it's possible that they didn't put a middle name on a gravestone.
Okay.
Okay, and here is Mary Eugenia, who was known as Mamie Knowlton Griffith, who was buried in the Lake Point Cemetery in Twilla, Utah.
That's nice.
And there is a picture of her.
Yes.
And I like the second picture a little bit better.
I've seen it before, but I haven't seen the second one before.
You haven't seen this picture?
I've seen the second one down, but I have not seen the first one.
Okay.
That's new for me.
It tells who her parents are, who her children are. At the death of her parents, there were 7 natural children in age from 22 down to 5, and 2 foster Indians. Lots of history there about her. And here is information about her father, her mother, her spouse, 7 of her children. Now, sometimes all the children aren't listed because they're still alive. Any family members that are still alive aren't going to be listed.
That makes sense.
And so here are children and half siblings. I mean, siblings and half siblings.
Okay.
Wow, lots of half siblings. So that suggests that her father was married twice, at least.
That's a lot.
Does it list more than one wife? No, it just lists one wife.
Yeah, mine doesn't have another wife. But her father might have had another wife, right?
Oh, her half siblings would be her father. So let's just click here on her father and let's see what it says about her. Her father was born right outside of Nauvoo. And he was married 3 times and had all of these children. It doesn't specify which wife the different children came from, but having this list of children would give us a good starting place if we didn't have it. The other day, as I was telling a little bit about my sister's daughter-in-law's searching, she found out who her great-grandparents were because they were listed on Find a Grave, and she had not known who they were before that. So these are wonderful things that can be found.
This little Lake Point Cemetery is kind of a tumble down place. I'm surprised there's so much there.
Okay, well, let's just look at the Lake Point Cemetery and let's look up Knowlton's and Griffiths and see. Let's look up Griffiths first because that was her.
He was
name.
her husband was a Griffith.
Now look, I think if I remember right, her husband was Charles Albert.
I think so.
And the reason I think that is that because the picture looks familiar, not because I paid that much attention. But here are all of the Griffiths that are buried in that cemetery. Well, you probably, if you were to research each of those names, you would learn a whole lot more about her husband's family, wouldn't you? There was one baby that was buried before it was named. Did I see that? Yeah. Oh, and the fact the cemetery doesn't have any record of it except just baby Griffith. No birth and death dates. That would have to take further research to be able to find out all of that.
Well, this will be fun to go back to.
Now, if you were to decide to take a cemetery trip on Memorial Day and go to Tooele, you could print out this list of graves and look for them all when you get to the cemetery.
That would be it.
And that just makes it so much more fun and meaningful. I find it a very emotionally and spiritually fulfilling day to go visit my relatives' graves on Memorial Day. So now let's go back and let's refine this search and search for Knowlton. And we'll see if the Knowltons are from the same place. Did I spell it correctly?
Looks like it. Kind of small on my screen.
Oh, just one. Just one Knowlton.
Harold Quincy Knowlton. It must be the same family because Quincy's a family name.
Ah, okay.
But I don't know who Harold is. I'll have to look into that.
Okay. Now we could also look up other cemeteries in Tooele County and look up, do the same surname search for those.
How do I add that as a source?
Angel, were you saying something?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on, I thought I was on mute. I'm so excited about this lesson. I found a grade that's not linked to Family Search. So I was asking Ian, I'm sorry. Does that make sense?
I want you to say it again.
So I found one of our relatives on Find a Grave, but it's not sourced on Family Search.
Oh, not on
Yes.
Family Search, but is in Find a Grave.
Yes.
Well, and that is one of the times when Family Search, when Find a Grave is particularly useful, is when we find those things. Okay, so does it tell you in Find a Grave who their family is?
Yes.
Okay, so that gives you then enough information. Maybe you want to check some censuses or something like that to verify, but that means that you can then add it to Family Search.
Yes, I don't know how to do that. So I was asking Ian, and I thought I was on mute, but I wasn't.
Oh, okay, very good.
Okay.
Well, what else we find out sometimes is that we know things about somebody, but they're not updated on Family Search. On Find a Grave. So it was not very long ago that I was, and I'm just having good luck tonight in the searching. So I'm going to try. I'm going to try this and see if I can recreate this one. Where is he buried, Charles? He's buried in a federal cemetery in Colorado, but it's not Fort Logan, and he died about 5 years ago, about 2015, and that wasn't an exact time, let's say within 5 years of then. And here he is, Fort Lyon National Cemetery. And so when I was just checking on this one day, and I saw that he had no parents listed. So I wanted to add the parents. So how did I go about doing that? He actually has 3 siblings that are deceased. We should, oh, he's got more than 2. We should make sure we've got the information about his sibling. Debbie Graham is already dead, and as is his well, at least Debbie is already deceased. So what would we do to add that? We would come up to the word that says suggest edits. And this is a time when you have to have your piece of paper and your pencil, and you have to write so that you can write things down. I would want to look ahead of time. I would want to find, let's walk through the whole thing. Let's go to Family Search, and let's go to my tree. This is my husband's cousin. So we're going to go to my husband's name, and we're going to go to his mother. Actually, we should have gone to his grandparents. Because what we want to do is we want to find her sister, whose name is Lorene Whitlock. So we want to go to Lorene, and then we want to go to her children. So we want to go down to the bottom to all of her children. And of her children, we want to write down Deborah Catherine Graham. Now, I don't know what Debbie's name was when she died, but she was born in 1956 and died in 2012. Oh, and then John Michael is the other brother. That's Debbie. And John Michael Graham is there. And we'll use his because I'm going to have to research a little bit to find out Debbie's name at the time she died, and it very likely will be on her Find a Grave on her family search page. But John Michael Graham will be listed. It'll be easier to search because we know his name, last name at the time he died. Okay, he was born the 15th of March, 1958, and he died the 21st of February, 1995. Now, so that is his page, and he has so far no sources attached. Everything that's on here so far is family records, family information. But so now that I've got that information about him, I'm going to come back up to Find a Grave, and I'm going to do a memorial search. And so his name is John, and I'm going to start by leaving out the middle name because maybe that's not on his thing. In fact, I am not even sure that he has a stone. I remember that the family was pretty strapped for money at the time that he died. He was born in 1956 and died in 1995, and he was buried in Colorado. And no matches were found for him. So I guess we can't use him as an example. So we'll go back to his brother. Well, that didn't take us to his brother, did it? Timothy Graham. And he was born in Fort Lyon. Well, I'm going to take out Fort Lyon because that's the name of the cemetery, but not the location necessarily. So, and we know that we searched him and found him before. Now, if we had succeeded in finding his brother John's Find a Grave, it would have on it a memorial ID number. And so if we would have written down the memorial ID number, and also if we would have, say, for example, their father's stone, and it has a memorial ID number, which is 312222869. So if we had Johnny's stone, we could go here to the father and click on edit. And then it would say edit the memorial. So we'd go to edit the memorial, and we would want, we already have enough information about Richard, but down here is family members. We would say that we wanted to add a sibling. So no, that's his father's stone. So we would want to be adding a child. So click here on add a child. To add a child, go to the child's memorial and then add their parents. Okay. So we would have to go to John Michael Graham's site and go to that edit thing, and then add his father. And we would already know that his father's number was 312222869. And when we click on that, it would have added the father's name in. Now, this is a mistake because we're not on Johnny's page, but it can pull that up and then we can verify that and make sure that that is the correct number. And then we say save changes after we filled in all the information. And then we have to wait until the person that created this memorial adds it. Only the person that created the memorial can make changes. So for those that I have started, I occasionally get an email from Find a Grave that says so and so and so and so would like you to change this person, and so then I change it and send them a note saying it's been done. Nowadays, a lot of the cemeteries themselves are the people who are taking care of the memorials, and they do that. Sometimes the person that's asking me to make a change or asking for a change to be made says, really, I'm closer related to this person than you are, so I would like to be the person in charge of this memorial. And so then they request a transfer of this page information. And I would always rather have somebody, if anybody asks me to do that, I always say yes. So that is how you make changes.
At what right to the person who's keeping track of the memorial? Only the right to keep a list, or we had some problems when the cemetery moved some of our graves around, so I'm wondering what rights, if you give it to the sexton, does he have the right to move the bodies around and things, or is it just a right to?
Okay, Find a Grave is just a record for public use. It has nothing to do with the ownership of the cemetery itself.
Okay.
So if you want to change, if somebody's headstone's in the wrong place or something like that at the cemetery, you have to contact the sexton, or if the county is in charge of the cemetery, contact the
County person.
Yeah, the person that's in charge of it. If I wanted to know who made Richard Leroy Graham's page, I would click on source, and lo and behold, it says that I did it in 2008. I don't even remember doing it. But so if somebody wanted me to make a change, then they would fill out that form. It's called a template, and then I would get the email and I would change it. So if one of Uncle Dick's children wanted to be in charge of this page, I'd be glad to let them, and I'd change that. Now, as Memorial Day approaches, I want to make up a list, and I usually do it by printing pages, and I end up with more pages than I need. But I think, oh, well, I'm in the Fountain Green Cemetery. I want to go visit all of our relatives that are buried in the Fountain Green Cemetery. And if I go back to the search screen, it's going to, sometimes it says, these are your favorite cemeteries. Maybe I have to go back till I'm on a complete search screen. And so I could do the same thing by, it really wants me to, I'm just gonna say I want to do a memorial search. Oh, a cemetery search. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the Fountain Green Cemetery. T-A-I-N, Fountain Green Cemetery in Sanpete County. And so I'm going to say now, here's the Fountain Green Cemetery, and I'm going to do a search in that cemetery for Guymans. But something clicked in my brain right now, and it says there are 6 requests. So people who know that they've got somebody buried in the Fountain Green Cemetery, there are 6 people that would like someone to please go and see if they can find their relative and take a picture. So I could print up this list of 6 requests before I go there on Memorial Day, and if I find those stones listed, and I very likely could because they have a very good list of all of the people buried in the Fountain Green Cemetery, and so I could take that list with me And as long as they're stones, maybe they know they're buried in the Fountain Green Cemetery, but they don't have stones, so that nobody could take a picture of anything but a blank spot of land. But I could take that and maybe very much please somebody who lives far away and couldn't get to Fountain Green and would like a copy of that. But so I can go to the Fountain Green Cemetery here, and I can search. The last name is Guyman, and the Guymans went to Fountain Green. The brother-in-law who married a Guyman's sister was called to be the bishop, and he was the bishop for a couple of decades. And most of his sister's siblings moved to Fountain Green, either after they were sent someplace else on a mission and finally released, or at the same time that he went there. And so there are lots of Guymans. My Guyman ancestor is James. One of James's wives is Christine Guyman. James, did I go too fast to find our own James? This is our James from 1816. And so here it's going to tell quite a bit about him. A picture of family, a picture of him, his gravestone. It lists here 5 wives. There should be 7. There should be 6. And then his siblings and his children. And it doesn't probably list all of his children, but it probably lists a whole bunch. Maybe sometime I'll trace down all of them and see if they're all in Find a Grave and add them till they're all there. But I'm going to want to know this. It might tell me where he's buried. In this case, it doesn't. So I'm going to have to go ahead and go, when I go to the cemetery, I'm going to have to look up his on the map by the gate of the cemetery to find where he's buried. And then I'm going to want, I saw that Christine Guyman is buried in that cemetery. And I think Mary Bowden Guyman is. I know that Mary Couch and Rhoda aren't buried there. I think Martha is. The one that I'm descended from is not listed here. And maybe that's because she doesn't seem to have a cemetery marker anywhere. We haven't been able to find it. She died in Minersville, Utah, but we have not been able to find a cemetery stone for her. But I'm going to want to print out his page and look for these other people while I am there, or else I might want to go to the page where I searched all the Guymans in the cemetery and print out that page and then do enough research and circle their names so that I know once I get to that cemetery who it is I want to look for. When I finally figured out last year that I had relatives buried in Parowan, that I had never been to their cemetery spot, and I didn't even know very much about him, because the story I always got from my mother was that when his daughter joined the church in Denmark, he disowned his daughter, and I'm descended from that daughter. So I never thought kindly of him. He later joined the church himself and made immense contributions to the economy of Parowan by he imported from Europe better sheep. And so the sheep and wool industry of, is Parowan in Iron County? Anyway, that end of Utah just was immensely changed and became a very big industry in Utah at a time when Utah really needed industry. And so that was due to the things that he did, that her father did, Niels Otto Mortensen. And so after I learned more about him, I wanted to go to his grave. And the things that I learned about him by reading his biography were immense. And so I ended up getting a history of that area and reading it just because I was so fascinated by all of the wool industry things that were changed because of things that he did. And I would not have found that out about him. Maybe it's available in other sources, but I didn't find it in other sources. I found it in Find a Grave. If anybody has any questions, unmute yourself and ask me questions. There is one other site. There are two other sites we have to just talk about briefly. One is Billion Graves. When Billion Graves was first introduced, it was going to be the, they were going to try to make it nicer than Find a Grave, but it has not succeeded in doing that yet. And it now charges to use that site. And so lots of people would rather go to the free site through Ancestry or through the Find a Grave site itself that's for free rather than pay for Billion Graves. The other site is Names in Stone. And so here I have a search of the Guymans that are buried in Utah and Names in Stone. And one of the things that is nice about Names in Stone is that it often lists people who are buried without a stone. And so if you have family that is buried someplace and they don't have a stone, they sometimes can be found here if they were buried in a plot in an official cemetery. So this then is a site that we sometimes use, but Find a Grave kind of is the strongest one. Okay, questions?
Is Names in Stone on the related, relatable searches that we have at our Family History Center?
You can get it on your own computer anytime. It doesn't have to be, it's not a paid for site.
Okay.
Billion Graves is you could ask that same question about Billion Graves. Is Billion Graves one of the sites that we can access for free at our Family History Center? And Diane, I don't know that answer.
Okay.
We'll have to look the next time we're there and looking at the list of sites to see. Any other questions?
Comment.
Any other my husband wants to make a comment.
On more than one of the cemeteries that were seen tonight during this lesson, I pulled out my phone and I pulled up maps. I wanted to see where that cemetery was. One down at the bottom of the lake. What was the cemetery?
The bottom of which lake?
The Great Salt Lake. Anyway, over in Tooele. I didn't even type Tooele in. I typed the name of the cemetery and Utah, and it showed me where it was. So they're easy to find.
So Jeannie, if you don't know where that cemetery is, before you go, do a search for it on your phone and under navigation maps, and it will show you how to get there.
Appreciate that.
Charles has also sometimes done a GPS search for latitude and longitude of a grave of our family, and when we were there, so that we would be able to find it easier next time. And then I can add that as an edit to Find a Grave. Now we could talk more about things we found in Find a Grave and things we found at cemeteries that were very interesting to us, hopefully to you, but it's 8 o'clock. And we're going to start doing a new thing at 8